Hi everyone, it's great to be speaking today at the Macular Society's conference. My name is Chantelle and I'm the Employment Manager at Blind in Business, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Blind in Business and what are next steps for graduates. So I'll start with a little bit of an introduction to Blind in Business and who we are. So we are a national charity founded over 30 years ago by 3 visually impaired graduates who left university with great degrees but struggled to get good jobs because of their eyesight. They all went on to do fantastic things. 2 are now partners at leading law firms, and the other is CEO of CAF Bank. And they founded Blind in Business to ensure that other young people wouldn't share the same barriers that they did. So we exist to bridge that gap between education and employment and support visually impaired people into work. And 30 years on, our mission is still the same. That's why we exist. So we have 2 services at Blind in Business. We have our training service and our employment service. So I'll start by talking a little bit about our training service. Our training service supports 13 to 19-year-old students, and it's all centered around building aspirations, raising confidence, and post-16 options. And within our training service, there are multiple workshops that are run. So we have our building prospects workshops that is run over a course of a few weeks, delving into employability skills, confidence, and next steps, whether that's university, apprenticeships, jobs. We also run quite frequently our Expectations Exceeded workshop, which is where we have a panel of VI alumni talk about their journey in education and their journey into employment. And that's a great opportunity to hear about other people's experiences and ask any questions that individuals may have as well. That leads us on to our employment service, which supports students and graduates with career planning, the recruitment process, internships, part-time work, full-time work, and graduate schemes as well. So I think that leads us to why do we do this? And I think one of the big reasons is at university, there is great support for students from career advisors, from disability advisors, and there's a great kind of support network. And then once the student leaves university and graduates, there's a bit of a drop off. And we find one of the biggest barriers is confidence in a candidate themselves, confidence and the belief that they'll be taken seriously in the recruitment process and in the world of work. And I think part of that comes from experiences that they've had through education, which also feeds in with overprotecting parents or QTBIs that have done a lot of work for them. And so we're on hand to support students and graduates into the career that they want and through every step of that recruitment process, which is why we operate on the social model of disability. It's not what an individual can or can't see. It's about education on society's part, as well as technology as well. So that leads me into how do we support? What do we actually do? So in our employment service, we can provide support with sourcing relevant opportunities. We focus on what a candidate wants to do, what are their skills, what are their interests, what do they enjoy doing, rather than what can I do because of my eyesight. And I find initially when I have a first meeting with a candidate, that tends to be one of the first questions that's asked, what can I do because of my eyesight? And it's about flipping that conversation around. What is it that you want to do? What interests you? What are your skill set? What are your strengths? And that's one of the first kind of conversations we have with a candidate when we're working with them, whether it's for applying for graduate schemes, graduate jobs, part-time jobs, work experience. We also provide support with CVs, so going through an individual CV, making sure that their skills and experiences are really highlighted. Similarly, with cover letters, making sure that they're matching the job description, making sure that the person's specification is being highlighted, and making sure that their skills and experiences and strengths are really clearly highlighted and that they're the best candidate for that job. In that recruitment process as well, we also offer support with interview preparation. We run various mock interview sessions throughout the year with a variety of different employers, as there's no way better to practice interviews than with people whose job it is to recruit. And in those interviews, candidates take part in a variety of different interviews with different interviewers and get feedback on each of their interviews. So areas of strength, areas for improvement, which we then can work with the candidate on in later sessions as well. And then more specifically, more so with graduate schemes, we also provide support with assessment centre preparation. So if you're applying for a graduate scheme, which I'll talk a little bit about in more detail in a bit, you might attend what's called an assessment centre, which might be in person or virtually. And we can provide support with prepping for those. So going through activities that typically tend to come up in an assessment centre, going through, again, mock interviews that tend to come up in part of them. And we also run frequently mock assessment centres in-house at Blind Business too, so you can get really familiar and confident in attending an assessment centre, what sort of things tend to come up, what's an assessor looking for in those different activities, whether it be a presentation or a group task. So when it comes to the real thing, candidates are confident and prepared going forward as they've had that dry run. We also provide support on requesting adjustments in the recruitment process and disclosing your vision impairment to an employer. We can facilitate conversations with an employer around your best working practice. But at the core of what we do, it's all about raising confidence and aspiration. So in that process, you're confident to request what you need in order to take part in that recruitment process. Part of our employment service as well is offering the opportunity for work experience. So we can arrange with employers bespoke work experience opportunities for candidates to get an insight into the field that they're interested in and the world of work, which is a great opportunity to develop your skill set, but also get hands-on experience. And that's actually one barrier for students and graduates going through education or university with access to work experience, because as we know, access to work is available if you have a paid job to have adjustments implemented, but access to work doesn't provide support if you're taking part in an unpaid opportunity, so work experience. So we work very closely with employers to run work experience programs for individuals where we can provide support in ensuring that any adjustments that are needed are implemented and candidates can take part in a meaningful, worthwhile and fun work experience opportunity. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about one candidate that we worked with as they accessed all areas of our service at Blind Business, and I think really kind of sums up the work that we do. So this individual first came into contact with Blind Business around 4 or 5 years ago, where they had applied for university and had failed to get through. So they came to us low in confidence, I would say, unsure of their next steps and what to do. So first thing we did was just sit down and have a conversation, like I mentioned before, about what they'd like to do, what interests them, what were their strengths, kind of career paths, did they have an idea of what they'd like to do. And this individual wanted to be a physiotherapist. So they had applied for university, unfortunately hadn't gone through, but knew that physiotherapy was what they wanted to do. So we put them in contact with physiotherapists in our network to have a chat around their experience through university and also working as a physiotherapist. So that gave the candidate great opportunity to network, ask any questions that they may have. We also worked closely on their UCAS application, making sure that that personal statement was really highlighting their skills, their strengths, their interest and passion for physiotherapy, and supported them in that UCAS application stage as well. When it came to interviews for their university placement, we worked closely on interview preparation. So going through questions that could potentially come up, going through their reasonings for wanting to study physiotherapy, their values, again, their strengths. So really dedicated and clear kind of preparation for their interviews to interview for a place at university. And after interviewing, they were offered places at every single university they applied for, which was fantastic news. And their confidence just started to skyrocket from initially being unsure of next steps and what they should do to putting together an action plan of the goal is to qualify to be a physiotherapist and work as a physiotherapist, and going through each of those stages to achieve their goal. After that, there was a couple of months before university started. So this individual decided to get a part-time job. So we worked closely with them on finding a job that would be of interest. So they had actually qualifications as a massage therapist. So we looked at part-time roles within massage therapy. And again, we went through sourcing relevant opportunities. We looked into interview preparation based off the job description when they were offered interviews, and again, worked closely throughout that process. And they were offered a job quite quickly and started to work part-time in the lead up to the university degree. And during this period, they also attended our flagship event, which is called Education to Employment. So it's a 2-day residential trip that's all centered around getting recruitment ready and building confidence. On the first day, we tend to do a fun activity. So in the past, we've done whitewater rafting, we've done rock climbing, we've done water skiing, and it's all about getting out of your comfort zone, doing something you may not usually do, and it's a great way to kind of network and have a bit of fun as well. It's always great fun, the water skiing, the rafting, and we always pick a fun activity. And it's a great icebreaker as well. On these events, we usually have between kind of 10 to 12 students and graduates attend. Some of which haven't met somebody who has a visual impairment before that's a similar age to them. So it's a great opportunity as well to kind of build a peer support network and meet other people too. Following our adventure morning, we then head back to a hotel where we host a formal dinner in the evening, where we invite a few of our alumni along to talk about their journey into education. So kind of their journey through school, university, might be apprenticeships, their journey through that kind of recruitment process and into the world of work. So again, another great opportunity to kind of network, ask any questions, and hear about others' experiences too. Following an overnight stay, we then have a assessment centre in the morning. So it's a mock assessment centre where we cover activities such as group work, presentation, role play activities, situational judgment tests. So all activities that employers tend to run as part of their assessment centres or as part of their recruitment process. And again, candidates get detailed feedback on their performance in each of those activities. And like I mentioned before, having that dry run means when it comes to the real thing, candidates are prepared, confident in that process, and also know what adjustments they need to request because they've had that dry run of what those activities are like. Following our assessment centre, we then invite a range of employers along to take part in mock interviews. So candidates have around 4 or 5 mock interviews with a range of different employers, and again, get detailed feedback on their performance, areas of strengths, areas for improvement that we can work on after the event. So this individual attended one of our education to employment events, and again, confidence continued to skyrocket. Fast forward a few years, they've now graduated and have been back in contact with VIB to start looking for graduate work. So we provided support on sourcing relevant opportunities as a physiotherapist, went through interview prep, and they are now working as a qualified physiotherapist. So fantastic story of that individual's journey from university to employment now. And kind of as a charity, which has been running for over 30 years, we're on hand to provide support to university students and graduates, as well as individuals who may be interested in apprenticeships or alternative routes into work as well. Which leads me on to kind of next steps for graduates and what do graduates need to consider as their next steps. So I'd say my first point would be the world is your oyster. Focus on what you want to do. Focus on what interests you, what your strengths are, what you enjoy doing, and use that to frame your action plan for job searching. kind of going through university, you may know exactly what it is that you want to do. So come third year or your final year, you already kind of got your action plan of what graduate scheme you want to apply to or what jobs you want to apply to. But if you're not sure, that's where kind of going into what interests you, what are your strengths, what are your skills, what do you like doing, is also really handy to kind of put together an idea of the types of jobs you might be interested in, the types of environments you'd like to work in, and frame that for your job searching. And of course, if you're not sure or you'd like some support with finding those opportunities or putting together a bit of an action plan of what sort of jobs you might be interested in, get in contact with us as we can run through a bit of a skills assessment and identify roles and careers that may be of interest. My second point would be to know your options. What I mean by that is graduate schemes versus graduate jobs. So if you are approaching your final year of university, there's a few routes that you can go down come graduation. You could apply for graduate schemes or apply directly for graduate roles. Difference between the two, a graduate scheme is a structured training program which tends to last around 2 years, and are run by kind of the larger organizations. And they can be rotational. So you could be in a few different departments. So you might be doing 6 months in one department, 6 months in another department, or they can be in one set department. But they are structured training programs that are usually kind of 2 years in length. Compared to graduate roles or graduate jobs, which are more so kind of direct entry jobs. So you're applying for a job that usually has a pretty soon kind of start date. Difference being, obviously, one is more of a structured training program. The other is more of a kind of direct entry role, and also the time at which you'd apply for them. So graduate schemes, you usually apply kind of a year in advance. So applications tend to open up around September, October time for a September, October start date of the following year. So this is where, if you're interested in graduate schemes, being really on the ball at the start of the year is really important of your final year, kind of towards end of second, beginning of the third. So you're aware of when the deadlines are, when they open, as they open quite early on. Compared to graduate jobs, where it would more so be applying when you'd like to start work. So that could be towards the end of your final year if you're taking a break after graduation. So there's a few options there. My advice would be with graduate schemes to do a little bit of research. So there's a whole host of different graduate schemes that are out there, from human resources to accounting to marketing. There's a range of different graduate schemes that employers run. And a lot of the big employers will run multiple graduate schemes. So they'll have a whole host of different programs. So doing some research into what interests you, what schemes stand out to you, and putting together a bit of a checklist of the schemes you would like to apply for, and a note of when those applications open. So when they do open, you can apply before they shut. With graduate schemes, their process tends to be a bit longer in terms of the recruitment process. So it's usually an online application. You may then be invited to do online psychometric testing or recorded videos or an interview. And then usually the final step is an assessment centre. So whether that's virtual or in person, assessment centres usually form part of that process. Compared to a graduate job or a direct entry job, where you might apply by sending in your CV and a cover letter. So making sure that your CV and cover letter is really strong, highlighting why you're the best candidate for that role. And then the process after that may differ depending on the company. It could be an interview, it could be an interview and a task, or a variety of different stages, whether it's a recorded interview to begin with or whatnot. So it can vary depending on the company and what their recruitment process is. My third point for what to consider as next steps is the importance of self-advocacy. So it's really important to self-advocate in the recruitment process and in the workplace when you need it. knowing what works best for you and your best working practice. So in the recruitment process, if there are any adjustments that you need, you can request those and get those implemented. And if you need any support with that, Blinder Business is on hand. So we provide advice and guidance around adjustments and disclosing a vision impairment to an employer. So we can provide support on that. And that's where the mock interviews and assessment centres can also come in handy. So having that practice run, know kind of what sort of adjustments you may need to request in that recruitment process if you're going for the real thing. And then finally, I'd say my last bit of advice is know the support that's available. So Blinder Business, we're on hand to provide support throughout the recruitment process to support you into the job that you want. In the workplace, Access to Work. So Access to Work is a government-funded scheme that provides funding for any adjustments that you may need in the workplace. So that may be assistive technology, that may be a support worker, that might be travel support to and from the workplace, but Access to Work is available to provide funding for adjustments. And the process of that is you apply online. So it's the individual that starts the application, it's not the employer. And I'd always advise with Access to Work, once you get your offer of employment, to get your Access to Work application started, as there can be a bit of a delay with it going through. And then you have, after that, a workplace assessment to talk through your best working practices, any adjustments that you may need. So know the support that's available as well. So in conclusion, to sum up, what should graduates consider as next steps? I'd say absolutely everything. Focus on what your interests are, find schemes and roles that fit within this, and get the adjustments that you need in the process. And know that Blinder Business is on hand to provide support and advice throughout the journey. So please do get in contact. You can send us an email or give us a call. And we'd be more than happy to have a chat about how we can support you. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Chantelle, thanks ever so much. That was really interesting. It's a really tough time and a complicated time for people making choices around education into work. And so it's great to know that Blind Business are there to support those sort of younger people and slightly older people, I would suggest sometimes do. I do have a couple of questions though. But the first one being really, so people are, they're going to decide whether to go to university or not. So what are people's options around that area?
Absolutely. So there are a few options. So as you mentioned, the university route, or you might be interested in apprenticeships. So there is a route to university through apprenticeships. It's a level 6, what's called a degree apprenticeship. And essentially you get your degree whilst working alongside it. And you also have the added bonus of not having student debt because you don't pay your university fees. It's all paid by the employer. So there are kind of two routes to university. You've got kind of your direct entry of applying to the university and doing your 3-4 years, or a degree apprenticeship as well. Similarly, there are different levels of apprenticeships. So if you're interested in working whilst also getting a qualification at the same time, but may not be interested in going to university, you might look into a level 4 or a level 5 apprenticeship, which is the equivalent of kind of the first stages of higher education, so a HND or foundation degree. So apprenticeships are as well a fantastic route to look into and explore if you're interested in gaining qualifications as well as gaining work alongside that, and also applying for university too.
Yeah, there's lots of options, isn't there? It's good. It's excellent. So you mentioned graduate schemes. What happens if some people can be quite unsure whether to go on a graduate scheme? So what are the benefits and maybe the shortcomings of them?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. So graduate schemes are, I'd say, one of the the kind of downfalls is they're very competitive. A lot of people apply for graduate schemes, so competition for them are quite high. But there are a range of different graduate schemes out there in different areas. So I'd say if you know what you're interested in, you're interested in kind of that tailored, structured program, which lasts kind of on average 2 years, it might be 3 years. It's worth looking into, particularly if you're interested in certain areas. So, for example, if you're interested in accountancy, a lot of graduate schemes within accountancy fund your qualifications as well to become a registered accountant, let's say. So I'd say positives are, depending on the route that you're going into, getting your qualifications, whether that's, like I mentioned, finance, accountancy, and having that structured program in place. Another benefit is some of them are rotational. So you might do a couple of months in each department to get a feel for what that organisation is like, what sort of work stands out to you, what interests you. So come the end of your scheme, you've got a better idea of kind of which department you want to go into. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does give you the option, more options, and more understanding of the actual role itself, what you've studied for all those years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well with graduate schemes and graduate roles and direct entry roles is if you are interested in kind of applying for a graduate scheme with a certain company or more generally, we can put you in contact with somebody that we've supported into that industry or that organization to chat around kind of their experience on a graduate scheme, how they found it, how they found the recruitment process, any hints and tips that they can give as well. So you can get kind of that firsthand kind of insight from a current graduate who's on a graduate scheme to get their thoughts and opinions on it.
Yeah, that peer support and networking is so important, isn't it, going forward? And I suppose the next question, I mean, you've mentioned it in your talk, obviously, the disclosure part. I mean, this is a big thing for me because it's when and where and how to disclose. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so when it comes to disclosure, it's a personal choice of when and if an individual discloses. But my advice is always yes to disclose your vision impairment and disclose with solutions. So if you're in, let's say, that recruitment process where one of the first steps is psychometric testing, and there's a whole host of different tests that you might get, from numerical to verbal reasoning or logical tests. And some of them can be quite visual. So whether that be find a difference in the shape or a timer coming up on the screen, requesting adjustments to ensure that you can take part fairly in that process is imperative. So I'd always advise to disclose with solutions of what adjustments you need in order to take part fairly on an equal playing field in that process. And don't be an expert. Don't expect the employer to kind of be an expert in adjustments in your eyesight, because nobody knows your eyesight like you do. So being really clear and concise with the adjustments that you may need, request them, demand them, don't ask for them, because it's about ensuring that you can take part fairly in that process, whether that's in the recruitment process, psychometric testing, assessment centres, interviews. And that's something as well that we can provide support with in terms of kind of advice and guidance around how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, self-advocacy is so important. And as you so rightly say, it's about approaching these potential employers with solutions, because if you give them solutions, it shows that you have confidence in your own abilities around your own vision, and that will actually stand you in good stead going forward.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, so and that's nice. So I mean, it's so important. You've mentioned a few times talking to other people in professional roles who have a visual impairment. So and you're able to support with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we've been running for over 30 years now. So we've helped many people into many different roles in across all kind of industries. So if somebody's interested in a particular kind of career path or a particular industry, a particular role, chances are we've helped someone into into that role so we can introduce them to find out about their experience, any hints and tips that they have. As I always think that's so much more impactful than kind of sitting down and putting together a plan of, okay, so these are the steps that to take in that recruitment process, and speaking to someone that's been there, done it, and is doing really well in their career. And similarly, we can introduce candidates to a professional who has a similar eye condition to them to discuss any adjustments they use in the workplace and share their kind of experience from education to employment too. So we're always on hand to introduce candidates to our alumni network. And like I said, that ranges from finance to journalism to marketing, and the list goes on.
Yeah, that's that lived experience is so important. But that leads on nicely to technology. So do you support people with technology and how to access it, what kind of technology and the correct time to do so?
So, unfortunately, we don't provide support with technology training, but for technology training, you have the RSBC who provide training on technology up to the age of 25, which is fantastic. We do have computers in our office. So we have 2 computers, one with JAWS and the other with Zoom Text Fusion. So if anyone wants to come into the office to work on applications, or kind of job search, we have computers with assistive technology that people can use and access. But unfortunately, we don't provide technology training.
Okay, well, it's good to know there's other avenues and you can support people to find them. That's great. So Chantelle, really, really thank you for joining us today. It's been a really interesting talk. I know lots of people will get lots of things from it. We'll make sure that your contact details are available at the end of the talk as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Colin. Thanks, everyone.